Good morning. I'm with CEO Simon Dyakowski of Aztec Minerals. AZT on the TSX Venture is the symbol. Simon, how are you today?
Hey, I'm great, Robert. Thank you for the opportunity to have a conversation. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Look, I think that Aztec is definitely in my top 5 picks for 2026. So I definitely wanted to have a conversation with you early in the new year to sort of set the stage for what's to come. You guys have been busy now, three news releases to kick off 2026. So tell us about the latest from Tombstone.
Yeah, so we initiated last year. Just a little bit of review. We about June we initiated a 5,000 meter drill program, and this was initially about 3,500 meters of RC, 1,500 meters of core in that neighborhood. Got off to a pretty hot start, hit some high grade silver, high grade gold, grew the shallow oxide model at contention, and right as the gold and silver price started to do what we all thought it was going to do over the past few years, which was take off. And so that led us to raising some money in September around Beaver Creek, and then we were able to expand the program again to 8,500 meters, so 7,000 meters of RC, and then 1,500 meters of core. But the reality was the lab that we were using really slowed down, and the results stopped coming from the lab. So kind of went from 100 to 0. So we didn't really have any news flow from November until now in January. And the last results that we had in 2025 were our best ever gold hole, but we unfortunately put those out it was November 4th. And if anybody is a tape reader, go back to the intraday chart of the GDX on November 4th, and then, ask me why I chose to put the news out on the day that, the worst sentiment in the GDX or GDXJ in the last couple of years. Obviously, I had no idea that was going to happen on Tuesday, November 4th, but that's what happened. So kind of got lost a little bit in the messaging that we hit a 330 gram meter hole shallow in an undrilled area of the contention north zone, which is quite interesting for us. So that was really the last meaningful news of 2025. Fast forward to 26, as promised by the lab, the results have started to roll in. So we drilled 40 holes in 2025, and we were only able to get the results out for 13 in 2025. And now we've put out, about 26 of them, which is fantastic. So we've got 26 holes out, and we're starting to get some momentum here. Not only did we get the final results for hole 17 of 2025, which was a high-graded gold hit, and let me explain this a little bit, Robert. So initially we reported about 36.5 meters of about I think it was 8.14 grams per ton gold, and a little kick of silver above that. But what we did was, because the results were so strong, we actually announced only the fire assay results. And fire assaying is what you use to get the gold numbers, but it doesn't work so well for silver because there's a lower detection limit. So a little bit technical, but you'll hear mining or exploration companies talk about often upper detection limit when there is over limit and it has to go for a higher level of analysis. But conversely, there's a lower detection limit. So what happened was anything under 10 grams silver didn't get analyzed in that hole. So we just had to use 0, assumed that they had no silver. But then when we came back with the multi-acid digestion results, so this is the multi-element, the machine that analyzes for the full suite of elements that was broken down and causing delays, we realized that a number of the intervals had up to 10 grams silver in them, not 0. And so what this did was it extended, and it increased the grade of the silver on the reported intersection, and it also extended the continuously mineralized reportable interval. So now it's 57.8 meters, basically from surface, from 9 meters down the hole, that averaged about 5.16 grams per ton gold and around, I think, just 30 grams silver, so about an ounce of silver. So that's very meaningful in a shallow interval. So that was very significant news. We also drilled a hole about 50 meters north of that just came in. Not as spectacular, but this one was mineralized from the collar, and it came back just under 50 meters of over 1 gram gold and nearly 2 ounces of silver. So in the context of, 40, what is it, around $4,500, $4,600 gold, and I can't believe I'm saying this, $80+ silver, yeah, ish, given the volatility on any given day, these are exceptional results. So we're now increasing the program again, and this time we're going from 8,500 meters. So we're going from 7,000 meters RC to now 9,500 meters RC, so plus 2,500, and the core rig, which is beavering away at the deep drilling. We're going to add 1,000 meters there because it's been doing quite well. So we're going to do 2,500 meters of core now in this combined 25-26 program, and 9,500 meters of RC. So that's 12,000 meters, sort of start to finish. That'll take us into mid-March. I'm not saying that we're going to stop there, but that's where we're going to go for now. And if the model changes and justifies more, then maybe we'll do more. But that'll bring us to a total drill hole database by Aztec at this project since 2020 to 21,500 meters roughly of core and RC. So it's a pretty good effort there, I'd say. To not, to pat myself on the back. No, I'm just kidding. It's a good amount of drilling over the last few years, and I think we're starting to prove, why Tombstone was so famous as a mining play. Whether it was underground in the 1800s when it was discovered, or open pit in the 70s and 80s, it's really coming together. And a few other things in the works that I can't talk about until they come to fruition, but I think there's a lot in the hopper here. And one thing we've never really talked about is metallurgy. And we've never been too worried about it because we have production records from the heap leach in the 70s and 80s, and they were pulling out a good amount of the silver because it's primarily hosted in a mineral called cerargyrite or chlorargyrite, which is soluble and leachable. We've recently shipped a number of samples, representative samples, to a metallurgical test lab to get some third-party validation of that. So I think that might help over the next couple of months with perhaps some institutional interest. I know that's been a little bit of a yellow flag for some of the really big players to come in, and that's maybe why we've been lagging a little bit. I don't know. I mean, who knows? There's lots of reasons why stocks trade the way they do, but we are still in that, what I would characterize as that deep value category. I mean, the stocks run, but if you compare it to some of our peers, even the ones that I've chosen for our presentation, even, great companies, but, Arizona Gold and Silver, Capitan, Minorum Silver, some of these are a little more advanced, but we're definitely lagging, and I think we've got the correct ammunition and catalyst flow to get revalued, and that's really drill results, expanded drilling, and metallurgy, and obviously deep drilling. If that comes in, that's going to be something else entirely. But yeah, so we're pretty busy, Robert. So thanks a lot for having me on to sort of recap and set the stage for 26.
Yeah, so I think it's really important that investors try to get a full grasp on Aztec and what the company's about, and also what the Tombstone, the flagship project, the Tombstone Gold-Silver Project, is about. And I like to think of Tombstone as essentially two projects. You have the near surface shallow gold and silver in oxides that I believe is the foundation of the value of the company, and then you have the deeper targets, these big AMT anomalies that are now being tested finally with the core drill, and the potential for discovery of a CRD deposit or a porphyry or something else. And I think of them as two different projects right now, but in reality, Eventually they're probably going to be one project. I mean, that's kind of how I see the future. So let's start with the near surface, shallow gold and silver. Now, you're right. A hole 2517, you chose literally the worst trading day of 2025 to put out that hole, which was over 50 meters of like 40 grams silver and over 5 grams gold, basically right there in the pit, near surface. So that was a fantastic, intercept. But tell us about the broader, deposit essentially right there. And one of the things that might be missing from some investors is a resource. So do you plan to put out a resource on the gold and silver in 2026?
We do, and we have been very close to pulling the trigger. A couple reasons that we haven't yet are the delays in the lab. I mean, we if we had pulled the trigger in November, we would have had an effective date sort of around now, and that would be excluding a couple dozen drill holes that potentially really move the needle. And so resources are important, but it's a bit of a balance in my opinion. I mean, because there's so much upside in the CRD model and to the west side target and possibly to the east side to the south, we want to make sure that the resource is properly representative of being a snapshot in time of the exploration program rather than a definition of what the mineral and metal endowment is. And so I think the best way for us to do that is to start strong, and we are going to start strong by completing all of our step out and expansion drilling before starting that maiden resource estimate. So it might get going in February or March, and maybe in Q2 we'll have one out, but I just want to stress that it wouldn't be an end point. It would be a beginning point for a bigger resource, hopefully.
Okay. And, I think we all like to get an idea of potential scale here. How would you describe what you're seeing there at Tombstone in terms of the gold and silver that's near surface that could be, a part of an open pit mine?
It just keeps getting bigger. I mean, that's the crazy thing. I mean, when I came into the project, 5 years ago, I was aware of a quote unquote small open pit resource, in limited areas associated with the historic pit. And now that we've grid drilled it to the tune of 20,000 meters, it's literally multiples of what we thought it was when we started. So that's kind of why we've been so focused on it, is it just keeps growing. Now, granted, not every hit is 300 meters of 1.5 grams or whatever they're doing up in the Yukon, but this is like brownfields exploration in a historic pit environment. So you're already looking at the pre-stripping being done. And at today's metal prices, I mean, even at 5 years ago metal prices, it's a very attractive property. So yeah, I mean, we really just need to drill more. And the reason that we didn't drill more in the past was just because the market was so bad. It was a bit of a task to get out there and drill 3,000 or 4,000 meters at a time when there was very little interest in exploration back in 22 and 23. So now we've got a lot more interest, and now our model is really bearing fruit, and that's where that big hit came from. I know it's not a true discovery step out, but in reality nothing at Tombstone is. It's been around for 150 years. I mean, none of this is new. It's a historic district, but I think the extent and the grade is really picking up, and so hole 17 was targeted because we had a big gap of drilling, and we knew somewhat that there was a mine there, an underground mine called the Head Center, and just by looking at some of the workings in and around it, in the stopes, we could see that it was a small amount of material moved, which suggested to us that there was potentially significant bulk tonnage, hanging wall and footwall mineralization still there. And for us that means 0.5 gram on average, let's say. that would be more than potentially mineable in a shallow environment. And then we hit a hole that was literally 10 times that over almost 60 meters. So this is the surprise. I'm just looking at my screen here, and before I make this statement, I'd like to caution everybody that talking about gram meters or grade thickness is in no way, shape, or form to be construed as a gross metal value, and it's not an approved method under 43101. It's a heuristic to compare drill results, but a lot of people use it, so we may as well just make a mention of it here. So out of our top 12 holes now at Tombstone, we have 9 of them, that are over 100 gram meters on gold alone. So they range from 111 up to 298 on gold alone. And then on silver alone, we have, I mean, actually, this is even not that accurate, but at least 12 that are over 1,500 grams silver alone. And then on gold equivalent alone, now we have 1 over 300, 4 over 200. Looks like we have another 4 over 150, another 4 over 100. So, I mean, we're hitting pretty consistently these, 150 to now 330 gram meter hits just with proving out the model. So it's going to get bigger. I can't really speculate on ounces or anything like that, but the average deposit size for a gold deposit in the world is like 500,000 ounces. And so as the gold price goes higher and the big easy mines get depleted, you're going to start to see a shift towards smaller deposits. It's just the nature of any depleting resource. That's how it works over the long run. So we want to position ourselves to be, a big player in the new world of smaller deposits, globally speaking. Not saying that ours is going to be small. And I think if you can get, 1 to 2 million ounces on private land in Arizona, open pit heap leachable, regardless of who's in the White House. I mean, maybe we'll talk about that. I don't know. I mean, it's been very mining friendly in the US, but Arizona's already had mining friendly laws on the books for a long time, e.g. licensing timeframes for them to give you a permit. So, I mean, all the great stuff that President Trump and all his boys are doing there, that's great if you're on BLM ground, or it's good for the macro. It's good for a lot of things. But for us, I mean, we're dealing with state people in Arizona, and Arizona being, the biggest copper mining state in the U.S. and one of the biggest in the world, top 10 in the Fraser Institute rankings. I mean, all of these things came to be, before Trump even, got involved in politics, right? So Arizona's great, as long as you're not in, a national forest or near some, pristine wilderness campsite or near some sort of wild cactuses that people like to, yeah, you know what I mean, right? So
definitely. Yeah. I mean, I've been to Tombstone 3 times now. I'm a frequent flyer to Tombstone, and it's a great part of Arizona. A lot of history there, obviously the shootout, the Oki Corral, but the mining history is something I've really come to appreciate and learned a lot more about. I mean, this was one of the most important places for mining in the U.S. in the 1880s and 1890s, and that's a whole nother podcast episode we could do at a later date, maybe after you sell it, Simon. But going back to the core pit there, I look at the plan map, ballpark in this 1,213 meters strike extent is basically like a fairway. The certain parts of the fairway swell out to 300-400 meters, some parts of it narrow to the south to 100 meters. So everybody can, do the math there with that scale. You can do your own calculations. They've drilled to 250, 300 or so meters there in parts of that, of the core pit. What areas are you most excited about for expansion? Because I see these green dots on the plan map. Obviously, you reported some more holes, here this morning. What has you most excited about expanding this?
Well, the west side is very exciting, especially in the context of today's silver price. This was slated to go into production in the early 80s. Now, we haven't fully proven this out yet. It's going to take a little bit more drilling, not a lot more drilling. I mean, I don't want to scare anybody. This isn't like drilling a porphyry or something like that. This is 150-meter RC holes. But we have to prioritize. So the west side gets a lot more silver rich, and then south gets a lot more silver rich as well. And the interesting thing about the south is we drilled, I hate to use the word, but we've got a pretty educated audience here, I feel, and they'll understand if they look at the plan map. We drilled one duster in the south, 0 grams per meter, no significant value. But what you need to look about that hole, which is like the first hole of the campaign last year, is it didn't close it off to the south. It just indicated what our model and what the tunnels show us is that it's bending to the southwest. And our chief geo, our VPX, he calls it a sigmoidal loop. So it's looping to the southwest. And that's where these historic workings are trending as well. So I think immediately west and south are the best places for us to expand, with the capital efficiency in mind, discovery cost, per ounce. That's sort of my metric. We've got a great model, and we could probably, if we had $50 million, we could go and do it all, but we don't. So we want to make the shareholders some money on a re-rate. The idea here is to go and drill most efficiently. So that's the most efficient way to grow, west and south. But the east is certainly not cut off. And so I think naturally that would come a little bit later. But yeah, west and south, to answer your question, Robert.
Okay, got it. Okay, so now let's talk about the CRD drilling, the core drilling. So this is a bit of a story, because it's been several years since you did the MT survey that showed the big anomalies there at depth. And I remember having so many conversations, with you over the years about when you're going to drill it, And just as a junior, these are higher risk targets, especially when you have so much good stuff at surface or very close to surface there in Tombstone. So finally, with the market becoming more robust in 2025 for junior mining, you were able to really raise some real money. And finally, we're drilling these. So one hole is in the books, TC2503. One hole is ongoing. Tell us whatever you can about these holes, and also tell us why you chose to expand the drill program with more core drilling.
Okay, so TC 2413, I guess it's called TC 25-3 now. That one we finished right before Christmas. It's in the lab, and that was sort of our test hole to see if we could get down the pre-collar into the limestones and drill around the area of the historic CRD intersection. So we've got this really interesting geophysical target. It's massive. There's a couple of them. They're huge. They're absolutely huge, like hundreds of meters across by hundreds of meters wide and a couple hundred meters high. So big, massive volume. It lights up on the MT. It's a big conductor, and that's right in line, vertically speaking, with the historic CRD intersection that was drilled in 1989 by Santa Fe Pacific Mining. 7 meters of around 10% metal, 9.1% lead, zinc, 0.6 copper, and an ounce of silver. So we started in an area near there to confirm and test around it, and just test out the drill, really, because while we are well funded now, it's not only a question of money, it's a question of, can you drill it? And many companies, and probably through no fault of their own, let's be honest, it's Mother Nature and the way the earth formed, have bankrupted themselves trying to drill this Bisbee group rock in the basin and range extension type geology. This is like a lot of Canadian investors. I know you've talked about this in some of your picks, but I'll just reiterate, it's really hard to drill. It's just super abrasive rock, and there's faulting and fracturing, and it's sandstone and siltstone. It's just not good for core drilling, no matter how skilled of a driller you are. That said, we found some really skilled drillers, and they know how to do it. So we want to make sure that we're not going for the. We wanted to make sure that we weren't going for the deep, big prize, with a machine that couldn't finish the job. So that's why we started there. All looks quite interesting. We'll see. We'll see what we get back from the lab. But now we are right into the heart of the AMT anomaly, and as we speak, we're right above it still. We're on the cusp though. So the big AMT anomaly, if investors look in our presentation, you'll be able to see the vertical projection of it. It starts around 450 meters or so below the surface, and we're right there right now. So this is pretty cool. If we hit, I'm sure you might, or I'm not sure, but I would hope maybe you'd invite me on again to talk about it. But
yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't want to presume anything, but I take any chance.
What's a hit going to look like? Like what would qualify in your mind as a hit, as a discovery?
Oh, that's such a good question.
Well, that's what I'm here for.
That is such a good question. I mean, I think there's a few things that could be driving that anomaly that aren't, the mother lode of sulfide. So, I don't think this is what it is, but it could be like a highly fractured zone where a lot of water is collected, which would be pretty disappointing. So let's hope it's not that. It could be graphite. I really don't think it's that. It could be pyrite. We don't want to make a pyrite discovery. I've already done that in my career. So yeah, I mean, I would say, a few meters of semi-massive or disseminated sulfide, silver, lead, zinc, maybe some, galena. That would be a big success if we had some sulfide, with, at least somewhat indications of economic quantities of metal. It could be anything, right? I mean, like we could, even if it's disseminated, I'd be pretty interested. Please don't take this as like trying to couch expectations. I'm just being perfectly honest with you. Like I've done so much drilling in my career now, which is a bit crazy to think, because I'm not even a geologist. I'm not even 40, but I've done a lot of drilling, and I've gotten pretty excited about shiny rock that hasn't really, delivered the mine. But I think if we get some disseminated sulfide that kicks silver, lead, zinc as a baseline, we'd be pretty excited. And let's just say we did that, that could lead to some downhole geophysics. We've contracted somebody to come down with a borehole EM, and then that can help us vector from there. So that's why we added the core, to have some flexibility to either, honestly, if we hit on the first hole something really meaningful, it's going to be 10,000 meters and 2 rigs probably, right? But let's say it's a sniff or better than a sniff, then we'll be following up right away. So that's why we added it. We want to have a bit of flexibility there.
Okay, very good.
How's that for an answer, Robert?
Yeah, that's a pretty good answer. I mean, basically, proof of concept would be a positive result, right? That it sulfides. And we've got some silver, lead, zinc down there, right?
That's exactly what I was looking for. Proof of concept. Got to get into my capital markets jargon here. Proof of concept. I'm so deep into mining now. I'm just looking for silver.
Yeah. We would appreciate as much silver as possible, please. That would be great for shareholders. So you expanded the meterage for the core drilling just based upon what you're seeing in the first hole and a half, or just because you've decided that this warrants more drilling?
Yeah, I mean, just basically because we like what we see up top, so I think there's a pretty good chance we'll be following up. I mean, that's a wild speculation, but also the drill rig is very good. Okay, so these guys are skilled drillers in the Bisbee, and we don't want to lose them. Okay, so we got to give them a bit more work. And
I see. Okay.
I've kind of told them, look, give us another 1,000, but if in a week or two we're into some really interesting looking rock, let's talk about, give us another 6 months kind of thing.
Got it. Okay. So, and that's a really important point because in the past, I mean, I was there, what was I there 5 months ago? You had a drill contractor that didn't really work out, right? And so this is not a piece of cake, like as you said, to drill this formation there in southern Arizona. And just generally the southwest of the US has really broken, fractured rocks that are difficult to core drill. I mean, yeah, you can RC drill them like all day long, but then you don't get to see the structures. And in a target that's deep, and you need to see the structures and the different layers of host rocks, it's important to core drill. So this would not be a target for like an RC drill. Okay, so that's a very good update, and you guys are really putting out a lot of news flow here early in the new year. Tell us about Arizona. So we talked a little bit about it a few minutes ago, but tell us about what makes Tombstone and southern Arizona special from a mining perspective. And also, that was an important point you made earlier about a portion of the property there is private patented claims. Can you tell us what that means?
Yeah, so look, Arizona is anybody that's gone on a vacation from northern North America to Mexico, Puerto Vallarta or Mexico City or wherever. I mean, chances are you've flown over Arizona and you've seen these giant open pits in the ground everywhere in the middle of the desert. So it's kind of interesting. Like when I think, I'm from Vancouver, when I think of big open pit mines, I'm thinking of rugged mountains and maybe like Montana, big open pit. But you don't often associate them with in the middle of the flat desert to have a giant porphyry copper mine, but that's where they are. There's tons of them. And so it's been around for 150 130 years probably as the premier copper jurisdiction. Arizona really built the US in the electrical revolution, right? I mean, the mining museum in Bisbee, if anybody gets a chance to go there, go to the old Phelps Dodge office. It's like a mining museum, and it gives a really good just a US history of what happened in the 1910s and 20s when the US was, everybody's talking about electrification now, which is pretty hilarious because electrification really happened over 100 years ago, and they needed a copper then for it. And it all came from Arizona. That's what turned Arizona from a territory into a state. All the guys on the East Coast, they didn't want this wild territory as part of as a state until they could afford to be a state. And this is what made them wealthy enough to join the union, I guess, whatever you guys call it down there, to join the United States. So we're right in there. We're in this historic area between Bisbee, Copper Queen. You got this world-class zinc deposit now called Hermosa Taylor that's being put in production by South 32. So it's all right there. But what's really important is that we're in Cochise County. And Cochise County is right at the very southeastern corner of the state, bordering on Mexico and New Mexico, on the road to El Paso, Texas. So this is a pretty cool spot. It's still the American frontier down there. It's still a land of freedom and I think of exploration and real potential. It's not Oregon, it's not Washington, it's not California. These are frontier lands still. And so very mining friendly, I gotta say. If you just chat with people in the cafe or the restaurants and just ask them about mining or exploration or what's happened in the Tombstone pit, I mean, nobody's gonna turn around and get nervous. They're gonna say, oh well, when are you guys going into production, right? They want jobs there. It's it's a little bit of a tourist town with without even a billboard on the I-10. They don't even have a billboard on the I-10 saying come down to Tombstone. So they need a shot in the arm, right? They need an injection of capital and life and energy, and silver mining is what made them exist, and maybe it puts them back on a better footing. So anyways, I'm kind of going on about how it's mining friendly. It just is. And then every city and town has a vibe, and Tombstone's kind of strong on a couple things. Strong on 2A. All right, so there are for a town of 800 people, I don't know, per capita gun stores. It's right there. Everybody's well protected. As they say, an armed society is a polite society. That is the ethos of Tombstone, and obviously it is. I mean, that's when Doc Holliday and Wyatt Earp came in and cleaned things up, so to speak. So that's one part of it. The other part is silver mining, right? People go there, they buy some trinkets, they go and see where the shootout was, and then they learn about, well, why was there so much population base here 100 plus years ago? And it's because silver was backing the US dollar back when the contention mine was in its heyday operationally around 1910. The gold silver ratio was, I think it was 1-to-1 at that point. So silver brought 10,000 plus people there. So that's sort of the big historic backdrop. This is really ingrained in their culture and their whole existence. And then private land. I mean, let's be honest. This is the most important thing. Everywhere that we've drilled and explored is on private historic mining patents. So this means we control and own the water. Sorry, not the water per se. We own 4 water wells on it, but we own the surface. We own the mineral, right? So in terms of permitting, for us to drill permit here, it's an upload of our drill plan to the county website. It's a notification. It's not an ask. It's a informational, this is where we're planning to drill. And this is night and day compared to, your comparable land tenement statuses around the world, most notably Bureau of Land Management, federal administration in the US. I mean, this is really subject to who's in charge of the federal bureaucracy, if it's going to be, conducive to exploration or not, right? So right now it's very good, but it can easily switch back. And just a couple of years ago, permitting on BLM ground wasn't that easy. So and we're not on a national forest. Canadians struggle with this concept of a national forest because we don't have an equivalent. We basically have crown land, which is owned by His Royal Highness King Charles III. And it basically administered by the federal government on behalf of Canadian citizens. So that's sort of like our BLM. And then we have provincial and national parks, which are, no-go zones for anything other than camping and, fishing and things like that. But in the US, they have, I guess you guys have state parks, you have national parks, you have BLM ground, and then you have national forests, which are kind of in between, but I would argue they're more like parks. On the end of the spectrum, there's limited ability to do some industrial activity, but it's quite complicated. And I think a lot of the governance of that is driven forest by forest by the chief forester. And so, look, I'm not saying you can't do it there. I don't have any projects in my sphere that are involved in national forests. I don't mean to slag anybody, and please don't take it the wrong way. I'm just saying that on the spectrum of risk on land tenement, private land in Cochise County, Arizona, literally cannot be beat in the world. So that's all I'm saying. We're in a really good spot.
Yeah, and I don't think you can overemphasize that enough. In fact, the first visit I made to Tombstone was in, I believe, 2022, and that's what really made me say, okay, like, this has a shot to really work, and that was when gold and silver prices were much different than they are today. I think gold was under 2,000 at that time, silver was under 20. And what really struck me was this is private patented ground. This was this is a brownfield site that has a lot of history in an area of, I mean, I would argue that Arizona is the best mining state in the U.S. So it's in a favorable county in the best mining state in the U.S. on private patented ground, right? And it has a history of mining that's still actually in the local culture, right? You can't really beat that, right? And what you're saying about, so you can't mine in a national park in the U.S. That's for sure. National forest is interesting because technically, according to the law in the Mining Code of 1872, there should be a path to actually be able to mine in a national forest, but that path in 2026 is excruciatingly difficult. And as you said, it's kind of up to the ranger in that county, in that state, and if they want to make it difficult for you, they can make it very, very difficult, right? And I mean, obviously, the president now is streamlining some of that, but I'm not even 100% sure all the changes that have been made, or if there's any changes, quite frankly, because it's up to the Forest Service, right? So the Forest Service is a separate entity, a federal entity, and they have a pretty robust rule book and set of guidelines that exploration and mining companies have to follow. But that being said, Tombstone is, if I have to think about all the locations of projects held by juniors in the US, Tombstone is definitely up there, top 5, top 3. Really doesn't get much better than that. So tell us about the milestones that you intend to achieve in 2026. We talked about more drilling, expanding the program. We talked about a resource update. What else is on the agenda?
Yeah, so a lot more drilling, resource update, results of the deep drilling, potentially more deep drilling, really understanding which model will be the focus over the next, second half of the year. Those are things that we've already discussed. We're also working on some metallurgical testing, and this is to demonstrate the leachability of the silver in the oxide. So this is something that was initiated in December, and the samples are in the lab right now. So this is something I think that, we're fairly comfortable with it, given the historic nature of the open pit heap leach in the mine there, in the contention mine. But we'd obviously like to have a third party come in and help us understand this and verify it from their perspective. So this is some initial network that'll come out. And then, beyond that, we are looking to expand the property footprint. So, over the past 5 years, we have made 5 deals on private land to grow, and maybe just to build a little bit on our previous segment on the land status. It's great that we have private land, and a lot of good properties do have a component of private land, but they're hemmed in by public land, and so we don't have that here. There's private land all around us. It's just a question of buying it. So we're working on that, making the footprint bigger, and that should come with more exploration targets. So none of that's certain, but it's a goal of ours, a corporate goal to expand. So if we're able to make some deals, I think those will be catalysts. Especially starting at 1,700 acres, if we can grow it by a few hundred acres, I think that'll be pretty good for us. So watch for that, hopefully, and wish us luck in that endeavor. Drilling, resource, network, land, and then if the resource and the network work well together, potentially we get into some more advanced engineering, like a PEA. Let's start working on that towards the end of the year. But we will definitely press release these initiatives as they are formalized. Like when our board approves a resource and we hire somebody, we'll announce that, so that the market isn't just guessing.
Yeah, I think so. In terms of catalysts that I think could really lead to a re-rating for Aztec, I would say PEA is up there, but obviously you want it to be the right PEA at the appropriate time. A couple other items before we wrap up this update conversation. Simon, can you tell us about the company cash in the treasury currently? And then also, I know one of the things that was maybe a stumbling point for some other investors who looked at the company a few years ago was that you didn't have 100% of the property, you didn't have 100% of the project, but that's changed a bit over time. Can you give us, an update on that?
Yeah, we have an 85% interest in the property. Last year or in 2024, we had a 75% interest in the property. And so we're heading in the right direction. We would like to get 100%. So, it's all governed by our joint venture agreement. And all I can really say on that is that here are the key terms. Our joint venture partners have to contribute pro rata to the spend. So if we set a budget of $1 million, our partners pay 150, we pay 850. If there's a party that doesn't participate, then they dilute on a straight line basis, and if they fall below 10%, their interest reverts to a royalty. So they keep 5% net profit interest in the property, but they don't have to participate anymore with cash calls. So those are the terms, and we'll see if that happens or if it stays. But we are hoping to get to 100% pretty soon here. But one thing that I think investors should note is, joint ventures can be a bit of a hassle when they're very strict and when they're more equally distributed. But when there's a lopsided one and there's an ability to set quarterly budgets, it's really not that detrimental to our efforts to advance. So it's really all I can say on that. It is what it is. I didn't structure the deal in 2018. I hadn't joined the company, but it's no reason. I didn't shy away from the company because of it. So I don't think investors should either. There's a solution for all these misperceptions of these companies.
And then final question. This is something that I've gotten from a couple of fellow investors who I speak to on a regular basis. They say, why is it called Aztec? Why can't we name it something about the US or Arizona? Is there any contemplation of any rebranding?
Yeah, look, I mean, why is it called Aztec? Because our founder launched the company on a project in Sonora, Mexico, which we own 100% of, no JV, made a great gold discovery on it. And we're going to probably do some work on that in a couple of months at Cervantes. And, it was a vehicle for that initially. And then Tombstone came in the mix about a year later. So, yeah, I mean, look, I'd say Aztecs is, I don't mean to be too flippant, but who cares, right? I mean, you change the name to whatever, Southwestern Silver, US Silver, you're going to grab a couple day traders in there on a day when silver's hot, and when silver corrects, they bail. So I'm not really, too fussed about it. And the real practical reason that we're not going to change the name is because it would require a special meeting and a shareholder vote and a big distraction. We want to just go and drill, baby, drill, right? In the words of the great Alaska governor, Sarah Palin. I think she coined that one. I can't remember. John McCain's vice presidential candidate. But yeah, we want to drill.
John McCain was bomb, baby, bomb, and Sarah Palin was drill, baby, drill.
Yeah, she could see Alaska from her porch, I believe. But anyways, no disrespect to some of the great Republican luminaries, but we got to drill. We're a small team, right? I mean, I'm marketing, raising money, running everything. I don't think really want to distract our team with a very cumbersome.
Cervantes is actually a very good project as well, and we focus on Tombstone. But that's a real asset that the company holds there, and it's attracted interest from some larger mining firms throughout the years. So that's something that we should also make note of. And
let me add one thing. Sorry to cut you off. I just want to add this: minerals, gold and silver, and all these metals that we're after are hosted in minerals. So Aztec is a mineral exploration company. And imagine if we hit a Taylor like zinc discovery. How dumb would it have been if we renamed it to, AZT silver only like 2 weeks before. I'm just saying, we don't know yet. I think Minerals is an appropriate name. And yeah, that's just what I wanted to say on that.
Got it. Drill, baby, drill. I'll be looking forward to more drill results from Aztec over the coming weeks and months. Thank you, Simon.
Thank you, Robert. Have a good day.